Has Motorola cut the price of its new foldable RAZR 2 fine?
And how the hell is it possible to fool a Tesla with a cheap projector? Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by Casa Systems, taking Australian technology to the global market.
Welcome to Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, where we talk to Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the news of the week. I'm Alex Kidman, and once upon a time, I used to present this show with a co-host. Now, what was his name?
Wait,
Oh,
I'm here.
that's right, Adam Turner. And for the first time this year, we're both in the virtual Vertical Hold studio at the same time.
Would have been nice of you to tidy up, mate.
We're also joined by two special guests this week. From Whistle Out, it's Alex Choros, because you can never have too many people called Alex on this show. Alex, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
And from Finder, it's Angus Kidman, because you can also never have too many people with the surname Kidman on this show either.
Yeah, the campaign for Adam to change his surname starts right now.
I'm 100% behind this campaign. It's
I feel
sensible.
like the start of a deck.
I think I'm going to have to push back a bit on that one.
So this week, the latest sales figures for smartphones in Australia suggest that we're all rather wedded to just two brands, but why is that? We'll be delving into that shortly, as well as why it's possible to confuse a Tesla with just a cheap projector. But first, the big phone news this week is the local launch news for the Motorola RAZR. Now, this is Motorola's take on a foldable phone. Obviously, it's also a bit of a throwback because in the early 2000s, everybody loved the RAZR, and it's an interesting device. But Alex, there is a bit of a problem now, isn't there?
There is a bit of a problem. It costs $2,700, and
So repeat that again for the people who might think they misheard you.
$2,700. It's quite a bit of cash.
Yeah, that's well, I suppose in the context of foldables, it seems
That's
cheap.
folding money. That's folding money. That's serious money.
The Samsung Galaxy Fold is $3,000, so the RAZR is cheaper. Cheaper is better, right?
Yeah, but it's only $300 cheaper, and inside the RAZR, it's kind of like a bit of a mid-range phone. We've got like a Snapdragon 710 processor, 128 gigabytes of storage. It's a 16 megapixel camera. It's not really a specky kind of phone. Like, it's all about the spectacle of its folding nature. Like, this is really what Motorola is billing it as. It's like a throwback phone to the RAZR. And it's very cool, but you are paying a lot of money for the privilege of a foldable phone.
Yeah, you are. And look, I mean, I know I had some hands-on time with it earlier this week. I know you did as well. And if they're going to sell it on that spectacle, on that sensation of having this phone, which when unfolded, it sort of just looks like almost a generic Android phone. Motorola sort of does that in a way. But then you fold it in half and people go, hang on, you've just broken your phone. Is that enough, do you think?
I don't know. Like, there is like something very cool about a phone that can just fold in half and like feels like almost nothing in your pockets. I mean, phones have kept getting bigger and bigger, and they're almost certainly going to keep getting bigger. I mean, like the Galaxy S20 Ultra is rumored to be a 6.9-inch phone.
That's mad.
So phones are getting big, and if you kind of just want, an antidote to that, the RAZR seems like it's like an interesting concept. And for me, it feels a bit more polished than the Galaxy Fold. Like, the Galaxy Fold is really kind of a tablet that folded in half, and it was a great tablet. But it was like an okay phone. The front screen was just a little bit too small to be useful. So whenever I really wanted to get anything done, I had to unfold the Fold and then like use two hands. Whereas with the RAZR, you flip it open and it's just like any other phone. Like, there's no learning curve. It's not trying to be anything more than a phone that becomes compact. But I guess like, who's willing to pay that kind of price for it is the question.
Am I right in thinking that when you fold it in half, there's a small monochrome screen on the front of it that you can see like text messages pop up and stuff like that?
It's a color screen, but yeah, that's correct.
We do live in 2020, Adam. We don't have to have monochrome screens on our phones anymore.
I think that was a
perfectly old school
reasonable question, because I do not feel like we're living in a century in which somebody is going to pay a four-figure sum for a phone whose brand is Motorola. I don't see how we're ever going to get past that.
Does that little front screen actually bring anything to the party? Can you can you type on it? Can you reply to messages, or just like, oh, who was that message from? And you can glance at it without having to unfold the phone. Is it that
The
all it
latter
does?
is basically the idea that they're
Yeah.
pushing. They're going for simple. I mean, Alex mentioned that this thing has a single primary camera on it. And I think I disagree with you on the Galaxy Fold. I sort of like the fact that Samsung tried to push different ideas and say, hey, if we're going to charge you a premium price, you'll get premium everything as they could do at that time. Wasn't flawless, don't get me wrong. But Motorola's gone a lot simpler, so there's no storage expansion. In fact, there's no SIM card slot at all. It's, I think, the first eSIM only phone we've officially seen in Australia.
Yeah, no, it is. I think it's the first eSIM only phone worldwide.
Probably some obscure Chinese brand we've never even heard of that hasn't moved outside the Chinese market that might have gone eSIM only. This is certainly your first mainstream big play towards that. And look, I think that's maybe got some appeal. I guess the other problem is that it's launching here on the 24th of February, which is 3 days before Mobile World Congress. And at Mobile World Congress, I pretty much expect to be drowning in foldable phones. Alex, am I wrong on that score?
Oh, no, not at all. Like, we're expecting to see TCL give us more goss on its foldables. TCL has a bunch of foldable concept devices. One that's a little bit more tablet-like, ones that has a similar flip phone form factor. There's rumors that Nokia could be making a foldable phone. Oppo could have a foldable phone. Like, I mean, it's very in vogue.
Yeah, well, speaking of in vogue and the kind of the South Korean elephant in the room here is Samsung, because the other kind of big foldable news this week is the pretty much complete specs, or what appear to be the complete specs, for their next foldable, which looks an awful lot like the Motorola RAZR.
Yeah, the Galaxy Z Flip, which is a really awkward name, leaked extensively this week. We've seen photos from it, well, renders from every angle. We've seen the spec sheet rundown, and we've got the price as well. And we don't know Australian pricing, but the Z Flip is expected to come in at US $1,400, which is US 100 less than the RAZR. So Samsung might be launching like more robust foldable flip phone at a cheaper price, and it's expected to be launching in the US on February 14. And Samsung does a thing where they kind of like to launch phones in major markets at the same time, at least for flagships. So Samsung could just sneak in and beat the RAZR to the punch.
I've got some serious doubts on that score, on the launch date score, if only because it's expected to be announced at the Galaxy Unpacked event, where they're also going to do the S20. And I don't know that Samsung's quite insane enough to say, here's 3 models of the S20 and a flip phone, and they're all kind of converging price points, because the suggestion is that the S20, and especially those higher end ones, are going to be $2,000 plus phones. In order to confuse people. I suspect they'll hold off on the Z Flip or Z Flip, or however they want it to be pronounced, for a little while in that case, but probably not all that long. I'm also kind of intrigued because it's not any cheaper, as you say. The specifications we've seen suggest that it's actually going to be better battery, faster processor, more cameras, and this idea that it's going to have an actual glass screen as well, which is kind of intriguing, because folding glass is one of those things that, shouldn't actually be feasible.
Well, not outside your better quality pubs, no. So.
I think we're not asking the big picture here, and that is, do people want folding phones anymore? Now, you guys are of a similar vintage to me. I think we might have all been, or at least a few of us were at the original RAZR launch in Sydney in about 2005.
I was still in high school.
You were still in high school.
That's enough from you, young man.
Right. Yeah. You could just sit in the corner, you young whippersnapper. I think the three of us then we're probably at that launch, and my big disappointment was that I couldn't flip it open Kirk style. But we're old men these days. Does anybody younger than us want a flip phone? And is anybody older than us going to spend this kind of stupid money for a flip phone? Is there a market for this?
To me, it kind of seems like the market is really those people who want a status symbol. Like, it is a status symbol phone. Like, it's cool. Like, it's a screen that bends. Like, screens shouldn't do that. Phones shouldn't do that. Like, it's a really cool piece of tech. But, it does seem like it has a use case in terms of, okay, what if you had a big screen that you can just fit into your pocket without it feeling like you've got, the weight of a world in there?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily being absolutely sold. RAZR maybe. And to be fair, that thing also has literally a skin which looks like the original RAZR phone. That whole
Mm.
kind of Tron
Yeah.
Neon-esque dialer thing, if you really wanted that. RAZR maybe, but I think the others are not necessarily going in that way. They're very much playing to that appeal of, yeah, look, we can make it smaller or we can make it bigger. We can do other things with it. We're still in early days with this tech, but I think the other big thing there is almost everywhere that I've either written this piece or seen other reporting on the RAZR, especially now that we know the Australian pricing, pretty much every consumer response has been, I love this idea, but there's no way I'm paying that price for it. If it was $600, I'd be all over it. So maybe in a year or two's time, or potentially, I guess, when if TCL Alcatel do live up to that promise of bringing a cheaper foldable to market, we'll suddenly see an influx of interest because it converges into that price point that people are actually willing to pay.
When foldables mature, I think people will want them because who doesn't want a phone that can also be a tablet? Like, if you can get two devices, or one device that's two devices at once, and they're both through.
I see. I'd go the exact opposite. I'd say the world that I live in now is one of basically benign tablet neglect, where no one cares about their tablet anymore because their phone's large enough. So who gives a damn? So I don't know that people feel they need that, but I guess the manufacturer is going to spend a lot of money trying to help us find out.
Yeah, I think I'm on
Of
Team
course.
Gus there.
Well, it's just like when I was reviewing the Fold, I really enjoyed being able to still like unfold the Fold and like have a bigger screen for watching Netflix at the gym or for reading a book. And my iPhone display is like perfectly adequate. Like it's a nice 6.5-inch screen. But having that little bit of extra real estate when I just wanted to read or to watch a video was still kind of nice because they're the kind of things I use an iPad mini for. And to get that in one package, I mean, it's a dumb luxury, but it's still nice. And if you can get that to an appropriate price point, then I definitely think there'd be interest.
I think that's
really good
Motorola's
point. Yeah.
marketing strategy right there. It's a dumb luxury, but it's nice.
So from phones that seem too expensive for Australians to buy to the phones that Australians apparently actually are buying. This week's also seen the latest Kantar World Panel figures come out around purported Australian phone sales figures. Gus, what are Australians actually buying?
Well, it won't come as any great shock to people that when you're looking at the phone sales figures for the last quarter of 2019, so the quarter in which your latest iPhone comes out, that the biggest sales were going for the new iPhone. That's no big shock at all. And that the other big major brand that's playing out there is Samsung. This is how Australia's phone market has looked pretty much as long as the modern smartphone era has been the case. What's more interesting is seeing who's fallen out of that equation in that time. So anyone want to hazard a guess at what number 3 on this list is?
Is it still Huawei?
No, it is not still Huawei.
No.
Huawei is plummeting off the cliff like a brick. So who does that leave as the potential number 3?
Oppo?
Oh, I was going to say Oppo. That was my next guess. Yeah.
Surprised me. I was expecting that Huawei would see a drop because obviously with sort of move away from Android, the sort of move out of the market, that was predictable, but it makes a big difference. And Samsung actually gained some market share as a result of that. A lot of Samsung sales are actually coming from the A series, not from just the really high end ones. So clearly they're trying to stretch themselves across both parts of the market.
So no disrespect to Oppo, but is that perhaps because they've got good deals with the carriers?
Oppo's only got a few deals with the carriers, though.
Okay.
And we'll get on to kind of the veracity of Kantar's figures in a minute because there's also a bit of a story to tell there. What I did find interesting, though, was their breakdown within iPhone. You're right, it was iPhone season, but their breakdown of who was buying what, because what they suggested was that if you're an existing loyal Apple customer, you probably bought an iPhone 11 specifically, not so much the Pro or the Pro Max. But if you were a switcher, you were probably buying an actual older iPhone generation, which suggests that the Android market still looks at Apple and says, yeah, they're nice, we probably want them, but not for that kind of money.
Mm.
Yeah, and very much that is what the market's like because we know Apple is like that. Like the cheap Apple is 2 generations ago and still not particularly cheap. If you want that choice, well, it's much, much broader in the Android market. And that, that accounts for the, the rise of Oppo in particular. Probably they're coming in to try and claim that space of the affordable non-Samsung alternative. Then I think number 4 on that list was Google. So,
but 3 and 4 in that list were dwarfed by Samsung and Apple.
Oh, absolutely. 3 is, I think, 5% of the market. So let's not overstate where those figures are really coming from. And as you said, there's some question. Yeah, as with any statistic, you can go, well, how much can we really rely on this? How much do we know about what's being sold directly from the vendors themselves in particular? I think is a gap in some of the World Panel methodology. So,
Well, their methodology is survey based, not necessarily sales tracking. We've certainly seen some phone companies say, "Oh, look, we don't regard their figures as viable at all." And as you
Yeah,
say, though, it's a bit of a
Alcatel in
grain of salt.
particular.
Yeah, Alcatel notably have come out kind of firing on this score, claiming that they actually sell an awful lot better than they do. And I suppose with due disclosure in mind, Alcatel used to be a sponsor of this show. That's neither here nor there, but I'm just mentioning it so that it clears the air on that one. It's still kind of interesting though, in that if Australia basically does buy Apple, Samsung, and not a lot else, Alex? What do you think the other phone brands should be doing to bump up that market share? Because Samsung was the only one that grew Android market share in that time.
I think they need to advertise. But I think, like Apple and Samsung are strong brands because they advertise and they advertise well. Like Samsung's entire strategy around the S series was just spending money so people were familiar with the brand. And it worked well. And it's not like these other brands aren't making great phones. Like in some case, they're better. Like Oppo has had like hit after hit with its mid-range phones recently. They're just excellent bang for buck. But you need that brand awareness. You need people to know what an Oppo is before they buy an Oppo. Like buy TVCs, buy online ads, buy billboards. It's if you want consumers to buy your phones, they need to know they exist. Because for a lot of people, it's still an Apple or a choice between Apple and Samsung.
yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something in that. I don't want to see what the Oppo knockoff take of that really annoying current Apple ad with the woman taking the picture of a selfie with her jaw flailing around like she's a bulldog. Like, I just never need to see that ad again. I don't want to see the knockoff version. But
Yeah, I
do
prefer
think
not to see that either.
but I think the brand awareness is key because there is a point when people go, oh, I just don't know about that. And that's where arguably the Pixel should have more strength than it does because people know about Google.
Yeah,
It's really interesting. I saw a cinema ad for the Pixel 4 the other day, and the entire premise was, what if the people behind YouTube, Google Search, and Google Maps made a phone? And it's just like an interesting way to pitch it.
It's a way to send the audience to sleep to pitch it, I would have said.
Yeah.
I sort of got what they're getting at. Hey, we're really smart and we made a phone. But at the same time, those are services people use, but I don't know, outside of the actual passionate Android community, I don't know that they're services that people particularly love or feel an attraction towards. That's, I think, what Apple especially does well. I agree some of their ads are a little on the freaky side, but they get that empathy consumer sentiment thing right. It's why they virtually never talk specs on their phones. They talk, here's what you can do.
And neither does Samsung. Both of them go for, they're touching on the emotion side of everything because the spec freaks, well, we know about them. We are them to some extent. But the reality is that people these days see phones as very, very equivalent. And you can talk a little bit about, hey, here's this amazing new feature, but you've really actually, you've got to have kind of this core brand proposition. I can't believe I just said core brand proposition. Kill me now, somebody. But yeah, you've got to set this idea that people are actually reacting to your brand as an emotion, not just that they care about the specs.
And to tie this back into the RAZR, that's what's really interesting about the RAZR. Is the audience buying the RAZR going to care about specs? Because the way Motorola is talking about it isn't specs; it's about reviving an icon. Like it almost seems for the people who are buying the RAZR, it doesn't matter what's inside.
But it becomes catch-22 because you don't want to talk about the specs when the specs aren't that crash hot for the money you're spending.
Yeah, and it's not clear how much the nostalgia factor will kick in. Like randomly, I went into the office the other day carrying the bag they gave at the launch of the Motor Rocker to stick to other well-known phones. And do you know what? There was one other person in the office who's my age who even knew what that was. Everybody else was zero awareness. So I also think maybe there's a little bit of internet echo chamber that gets excited about these things, but it might be harder to get the general public to really give a damn at this point.
So the idea of autonomous self-driving cars like Teslas are still a little bit freaky for people, still a little bit too out of the movies. What if it decides to, become self-aware and try and kill me? Kind of freaky. But apparently, Alex, there are other ways that your car might try to kill you as well.
Yeah, look, it turns out you don't need a multi-million-dollar Terminator to take over your Tesla in order for it to go swerving off the road. All you actually need is a cheap projector.
I can pick up one of them dirt cheap at my local insert name of electronics retailer that's still in business here. So what's step 2?
Well, so step 2 is to project something in the field of vision of the autonomous driving system, and it will react to it. Apparently, so this is a PhD student in Israel ran experiments using a Tesla and, in fact, another autonomous driving system to do things like present fake road lines or people in the road, and he basically shows that what happens is they're not quite capable of saying, "Hang on, that's not actually real world; that's projection." And so it goes, oh, there's someone in the road, I better hit the brakes. Or, in one particularly worrying case, he painted lines on the road. And so the automatic driving system said, oh, right, well, I better turn around this corner, which isn't here. And it crossed to the wrong side of the road.
So it's the Tesla version of getting through face recognition on a phone by holding a photo up to it.
Essentially, yes. But it's actually slightly more frightening than that, because one of the other things he proved was if you had a drone with some kind of projector on it, again, not that difficult, can be purchased online, that kind of thing, or hacked together yourself if you're keen. All you needed to do was show a flash frame of, your person in the road, your fake road lines or whatever. Because the autonomous system is actually scanning the road far more efficiently than a human being can, it sees it and reacts to it, even though the driver might not, because it's too quick for human eyes to actually see.
So the problem here is not a flaw in the cars. They're not exploiting some flaw, except for what they're exploiting is the fact that a person has got enough, situational awareness and knowledge to go, that ain't right. That doesn't look real, or that shouldn't be there. Where the machine sees what it's expecting to see and goes, okay, that's a speed sign. That's a line on the road.
It's that
How do you combat that?
It's difficult because it is that perceptual difference that you've got the car to recognize the world well enough to behave the way you think you want it to behave, but its underlying perceptions are actually completely different. Now, there's a version of this that you solve through machine learning. You throw a lot of examples out and say, do this, don't do that. But I'm not sure how much accurate footage we've got of cars running over people that's not from Hollywood movies that we could throw into that machine learning system.
So basically, the car needs a bullshit detector. The car needs to be able to tell when something's not quite right.
Because you'd think maybe something like a depth sensing camera could help with this, like we're seeing on smartphones now, where okay, no, there's no depth to that person, there's projection. But I don't know how you'd handle fake lanes, because a lane is just paint on a road and doesn't really have any depth. So
I think
it's tricky.
There'd also be a big challenge there, because the depth sensor, the time of flight style cameras that we see on phones these days, typically you are holding those up and you're holding them in place for a decent length of time for it to bounce lots of light around, get lots of measurements, really do some complicated maths there. Your Tesla's barreling along at 100 kph. You're going to have to be processing an awful lot of data in real time about depth for that to work. I'm not saying that that's impossible to do, but it's a bigger challenge.
It's a bandwidth issue if you're actually trying to offload that process into the cloud, which is what a lot of intelligent systems do.
And you don't want to risk a false negative. You don't want the Tesla to see a person crossing the road and say, there's a 60% chance that's a projection. Bang.
Well, look, I think that gets to the heart of also why this works. And in some ways why this might not be a super critical issue. Yeah, exactly. It's actually saying, right, there's a person, brake, the lane goes this way, turn. But in the experiments, he's got video of the experiments that he's done. In the experiment where he got the car to cross the lane, there was nothing else in the other lane. And if it's going to stop for a person, you can be fairly sure it's going to stop or at least slow if there's a car on the other side. So I suspect...
Yeah, but unless the car on the other side's a Tesla as well, that, semi-trailer on the other side is still going to go smack into you, isn't it?
No, but what I suspect, I don't know. I don't have enough Teslas. If Tesla wants to send me a bunch of their cars, I'll run this test. But I suspect what it's going to do is whatever the automatic system does when it has to turn an actual traffic corner, it'll go, right, the road bends that way, but there is traffic there, so I'll just slow down and wait until it's clear.
And reassess and see what the possible options are.
Certainly, if I was building that system, that's the kind of smarts I'd want to build into it. And perhaps having this research out in the open will push that along further to the point where this doesn't become as much of an issue.
Usually why people release stuff like this, isn't it? Because they want to bring attention to it to get the manufacturer to build in extra safeguards.
Exactly. It's not about being malicious or encouraging other people to try these kind of attacks. It's about saying, this is possible. How can we address this? Or what's the best route forward?
But then when we see the version of the story that runs in the Daily Mail, that's probably not the angle they're going to focus on.
Well, let's face it, some idiot is actually going to try and do this. if I was particularly brutal, there is a guy down the road who owns a Tesla. I don't think he autopilots out of his garage to speak of, but I could sit there and try and flick, images onto the road to see if it would affect him or not. I like him at least a little bit, so I won't do that. But some idiot will try to muck up a Tesla, for the lols.
Yeah. So, how soon do you plan to do that, Adam?
Just got to find out where Alex and his neighbour lives.
There is, of course, Adam, there is one other big, big problem with this, which is going to hit right at you personally.
I'm listening. I'm a bit scared at this point.
This doesn't bode well for your dream car, the Cybertruck.
Oh, no, the Cybertruck. Yes, we don't want the Cybertruck to be going off the wrong side of the road, do we? The only thing worse than being hit by a Tesla would be being hit by a Cybertruck, I think.
It would no longer be the crime-fighting truck. It'd be the crime-committing truck. Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Alex for joining us for the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Alex, if folks want to check out your work or catch up with you on social media, how do they do that?
You can check out my work at whistleout.com.au or find me on Twitter at _Choros, which is CHOROS. The C is silent.
Thanks also to Angus for your time. Now, if folks want to check out your writing or catch up with you on social media, where do they find you?
Well, they can find me online at finder.com.au, or they can find me on Twitter at GusWorldAU.
And of course, you can catch up with us on Twitter at VerticalHoldAU or via the Vertical Hold Facebook page.
And once again, thanks everyone for listening. And thanks for all your shout outs, your feedback, your reviews. Keep them coming in 2020. Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by Casa Systems, taking Australian technology to the global market. Sweet, I can get one of them at Radio Shack. What's next? Step 2.
What? Radio Shack?
Yeah, I know.
How old are you?
I know. As I said it, I thought, hang on, I don't think they're around anymore.